Peter Credlin, live on Sky News Australia.
Good evening, welcome to the show. Great to have your company. Let's have a look at tonight's top stories. Here's what's coming up on the program. Good news out of the United States, with Congress set to greenlight the sale of the Virginia-class nuclear sub to Australia as early as next week, although of course those subs won't arrive until about a decade away. The fallout from Labor's industrial relations deal with the crossbench continues today. The mining industry, several big employers vowing to launch a campaign against the government and these new laws, which they say have the potential to wreck the economy. Chris Bowen arrives at the UN COP28 climate conference in oil-rich UAE in Dubai, throwing your money around. Already he's announced that Australia will cough up $100 million to establish a Pacific resilience facility. He's also signed us up to another UN fund for developing nations, the same fund we only just got out of under Scott Morrison. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, well, they want nuclear power and we still ban it. It's another Albanese mess. And the federal court has just heard that Brittany Higgins was distressed because she felt she could not retain a parliamentary job if she reported her sexual assault, her alleged sexual assault, after it was revealed that her former employers, Liberal Senators Reynolds and Cash, were muzzled from attending the mediation that led to her $2.45 million payout.
Ms Higgins herself said it was not a payment, anything about an assault. It was lack of duty of care. And even when you read this, it's not even about that. There's no liability admitted to at all. So why did the taxpayer fork out $2.445 million? Who made that decision? How did you come to it? Why wasn't it transparent? Why didn't you know in the media? Why didn't we see it in the parliament? Who did see it? And who approved this?
Exactly, Barnaby Joyce, and we will get into that in a moment. But first, given this is my final Credlin program for the year, I hope you'll allow me some reflections on what's been a momentous year for our country. It has been momentous because so many of you took a very courageous step well before the polls said it was the majority view to stand against the zeitgeist and defend the principle that we are all equal before the law, and that our Constitution should remain colourblind. The principle that our democracy must not differentiate between citizens based on race. Now, I'm proud that the country I love stood against the power of the corporates and the sporting bodies, the churches and the massive megaphone of the Prime Minister and his government, and that we did the right thing by voting no. And I am really proud that my viewers, you, helped drive that result because you were brave enough to speak up in your community, down at the shops, at work or the bowling club, church, wherever you were, amongst friends and family, because those conversations you had are what delivered victory. Now, I understand now more than ever, life is a bit easier if you just keep your head down. Life is easier if you don't say what you really think, if you don't defend the things that have made this country what it is, things that the left wants to denigrate, our Judeo-Christian values, our way of life, our flag and our history. Now, I get that. Occasionally I read some of my own social media trolls and wonder where on earth we've got things so wrong that people raised here in one of the freest and fairest, most prosperous countries on earth could be so ashamed of Australia. But then I tell myself it's actually their problem, not mine. They're the gutless ones, hiding behind their keyboards with their made-up names mouthing off. They're the ones with no history or no understanding of our story and the events that have shaped us, no willingness to defend what matters, wanting someone else to pick up the tab for their lifestyle, not willing to be the sort of person who builds rather than tears down. My viewers, you are the people that give me faith that we can win the war against the left. Because you get that we are at an inflection point in history, a genuine civilisational moment. And like me, you don't buy this lie that we should just accept, we should manage our decline here in Australia and elsewhere in the West. Like me, you're not prepared to go down without a fight. Indeed, you're as determined as I am to win. You are, in Menzies' words, lifters, not leaners. The people who have worked hard to get ahead, who don't want much from the government other than help with what you can't do for yourself. And if anything, you want more resilient citizens and a smaller state. You are the people that, as the Voice vote showed us, are in the majority. Now, the left tried to say you weren't, but across the board, in every state, across every demographic, you voted to reject identity politics. But as my old boss Tony Abbott reminded us a few years back, the silent majority won't remain a majority if it remains silent. And that's why rejecting the Voice and speaking as loudly as you did shows me that so many of you no longer expect the ship just to right itself, so hence the days of silence are over. To all of you who send me emails and letters and the rest, I am very grateful. I get hundreds a day, hundreds of them, so while I can't respond to everything, I promise you I read it all. Thank you. We're a lean team here at Sky News. There's just 3 people each day who help me get this show to air. Sometimes it's just 2. But the fact that we have been the #1 show again this year, like last year and the year before, well, that shows me we hit the mark each night with what we do. And that's in large part thanks to your research work, your advice and your encouragement. To Connor, Will and now Damien, who's just joined us, my Credlin team, thank you. If you asked me when I worked in politics, would I ever end up in the media, I would have said, you're crazy. I think I would have said barking mad. That would have been my exact phrase. But here I am, and I won't vacate this chair while so much is at stake for our country and the wider world. To those of you who live outside our capital cities, a special word of encouragement. I grew up in the little Victorian town of Witchyproof. 900 people, if that, on the highway between Bendigo and Mildura. And I'm proud to come from regional Australia. And it doesn't matter where I live or what I do, that is where my heart is. I care about our farmers, I care about our country towns. And I want to make sure you know your stories from country Australia are as important to me each night as the news we cover out of Canberra. I have your back. I know you have mine. As we head into Christmas, I hope that every one of you gets to spend time with those you love. And that next year, in 2024, we continue the fight back that started this year when so many of us rejected Labor's race-based voice. On Monday, the 15th of January, I'll be back on deck at this desk at 6 o'clock for the Credlin Hour, and I hope that you will again join me. Thank you for your support of me, your support of this show, and the values too that make Australia worth celebrating and defending. From my family to yours, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a new year where we all strive again to make our country even better. Parliament's done. We'll go to Canberra though for the headlines. Sky News political reporter Olivia Casely.
Good evening. Foreign Minister Penny Wong will visit Israel next month as part of a broader trip to the Middle East. She hopes to meet key counterparts in Israel, the West Bank and other countries in the region. She'll also push for an end to the war in Gaza. A statement from Penny Wong's office reads, Australia has been working with countries that have influence in the region to help protect and support civilians, to help prevent the conflict from spreading, and to reinforce the need for the just and enduring peace that all of us want. Assistant Foreign Minister Tim Watts will lay the groundwork for the visit on his own week-long trip to similar destinations, departing on Saturday. Politicians from both sides of politics will be on the ground in the region next week, including Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Birmingham as part of a bipartisan delegation.
Most of Australia's like-minded partner nations have had presidents, prime ministers, foreign or defence ministers already visit Israel, do so very quickly after 7th of October, Hamas massacres and attacks. And so it would have been much more appropriate for the Albanese government to move quickly.
Meanwhile, Defence Minister Richard Marles has welcomed news that the US Congress is likely to pass AUKUS-related legislation at the end of next week. The laws would allow nuclear submarines and advanced military technology to be shared with Australia.
It's obviously a matter for the US Congress, but we are hopeful of a good result. And if we achieve that good result, what's in prospect is a once-in-a-generation change.
Brittany Higgins has told Bruce Lerriman's defamation trial against Channel 10 and Lisa Wilkinson she felt she could not retain her parliamentary job if she told police about her alleged rape. Catherine Cripps, a rape crisis counsellor who attended a meet and greet with Ms Higgins and Australian Federal Police on April 8, 2019, told the court she desperately did want to report it, but she felt she wanted her job more and there was a terrible conflict.
As I said, the last parliamentary week for the year. Joining me now to wrap it all up, our first panel for this evening, One Nation Chief of Staff James Ashby and his other regular half, 2GB host Luke Grant. Gents, great to have you. I've enjoyed having you on the program all year.
Hi, Peter.
We'll talk about next year in a bit, but let's talk about how 2023 ended up, James. James, Parliament, of course, rose yesterday for the year. We're now halfway through the term. Give us your report card, if you might, for the government.
Well, I'd hate to put the government as a TripAdvisor listing because it would just be 0 stars. Look, it's very difficult to attack this in any other way than to say the government have failed the people of Australia. Anthony Albanese, starting from the moment he got into office, he was not focused on dealing with the real issues that this country faced. In fact, he was more interested in the voice of Parliament, which you rightfully articulated at the start of the show. And that's what's led to this government actually having no agenda. So once the voice failed, he has had no plans moving forward. Certainly no support in broad terms for industrial relations until what happened yesterday in the Senate, which was absolutely disgusting. And I know we'll talk about that further, but the report card is pretty poor. And Anthony Albanese, if he had family and friends, they would be very disappointed in their son if they were to bring a report card home like that. Horrible.
Yeah, well, the polls are also a pretty shocking report card for him this week, Luke. We've got a shocking news poll, 31% primary. YouGov yesterday gave him a 29% primary. Now, you want a primary with a 4 in front of it if you can get it,
Yes.
but a 29 primary is diabolical.
Yep.
A coalition at 37, that's strong. The Greens very high at 15%. All this talk about a reset over summer, I got to ask the question, I mean, reset to what? If it's more of the same, they're still in trouble.
Yeah.
Do you think the government's sort of listening and ready to change?
I don't know if they can change. Look, I've got no doubt they're listening. They'll have people everywhere screaming from the rooftops saying, hey, you're about to be a one-term government. But, Peter, it's not one issue and it's not one minister. You know, we can count off cost of living. We can count off the voice. We can count off the big Australia policy that no one saw coming. I mean, we opened the gates to 600,000 people. We end up with a couple of hundred plumbers. This is all about addressing the skill shortage. And then you've got Linda Burney, hopeless. Claire O'Neill, hapless. Andrew Giles, another. What about the Attorney General this week? So it's not one issue and it's not one minister, and he might reshuffle, but that ain't going to fix it. The problem is in here, and Peter, it's in here.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think he's lost his confidence, particularly on the voice.
I agree.
And I'd say that his heart is always on the left. I don't know how he moves into the centre on politics. Talk to me about those IR changes that went through. I want to say a bit of a grubby deal with the crossbench there, a whole lot of rights for union delegates, the criminalisation, James, of wage theft and a lot more. Give us your sense of how it's going to affect the economy, because that's the big push out today from business associations and the miners. They say, or they're calling the government, in fact, economic vandals.
Anthony Albanese certainly wears the bad Santa image coming into Christmas with what's occurred yesterday. This I didn't foresee. I didn't. BCA, the Business Council of Australia, had started making text messages to me and One Nation's office on Tuesday, Peter, suggesting that some background deal had been done with the crossbench, namely Jackie Lambie and David Pocock. And when the question was actually put to both sides of those independents, they flatly denied that they were doing any deals. Now, we learnt by Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, that that was not the case. This is really mischievous. I want to know what deals were done, particularly with Lydia Thorpe. When you think about it, she was also instrumental in this. She was the fallback girl. She was the one that if Jackie Lambie or David Pocock pulled out last minute, they had the numbers still with her. So what is it that Lydia Thorpe gets for the Black Sovereign movement moving forward? A lot will come out in the new year. I think a lot of questions need to be asked over this Christmas break. If I was a journalist, I know a lot of the good ones go on holidays, but I wouldn't be letting up on this government. Make them work across the Christmas period. Ask them the questions, because there is some destruction coming for the whole country. And it's not just big business. I know that big business have been the most vocal on this, but I think a lot of small business are going to wake up in the new year and say, what the hell just happened to our industrial relations laws? Because we're now feeling it. I know they were trying to cool the economy with spending. Well, this is the oddest way to do it. I think there will be job losses off the back of this decision to make these industrial relations changes.
Let's go to the COP meeting overseas if we can, Luke. You got $100 million from Australian taxpayers, borrowed money, I might say here. This is to establish the Pacific Resilience Facility, so it's a fund. We're also rejoining another UN-backed green fund. This is for developing nations, which I might add includes China. And this reverses the position taken by Scott Morrison in 2018 to get us out of these funds. The Albanese government's gone over there amongst a crowd that are all pro-nuclear, saying that we're not going to be a part of it, but we're tripling our renewables. I mean, this is madness.
Absolute madness. And isn't it fascinating to see that there were 22 advanced nations, I know we've covered it before, but I just have to raise it. It was saying, let's triple our nuclear energy production. And what do we turn up with? We turn up with a bloke that only knows no to nuclear, not interested in investigating the fact that we have all this uranium in Australia, which has to be processed to understand, but it's just a flat no. You've got people over there with hundreds of limousines and private planes telling us, oh, don't fly anywhere, don't drive one of those old cars. And I think people are waking up, Peter. I really do. I just get a sense on the open line this week that people have had enough. They won't be spoken to by elites like they were during The Voice and now during this. They can work things out for themselves, and they can see the folly, particularly in Australia, where we could turn everything off and not make a jot of difference.
Oh, spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. I do think they're looking at this and saying the emperor's got no clothes. James, you're not going to get away with it. You were going to get a question here. I'll tell my viewers, for many years I've been telling James Ashby he's too good to be just a staffer behind the scenes. He's got to get out there, run for a seat, get into Parliament. Well, he's announced that, or Pauline Hanson has announced that overnight. So you're stepping from the back room onto centre stage, James. Tell us what made you want to take the leap.
Yes. Well, I do thank you for your kind words, Peter, and I do acknowledge the fact you've been pushing me for quite some time. But it's not just you. I don't know whether you've been paying your viewers off to write to head office as well and say the same thing, but that has been very encouraging. I do want to say thank you to you, because without platforms like this and without programs like yours, I guess I probably wouldn't have had that encouragement or the same level of encouragement. There's been stacks of business people here locally. You are so well watched in the regions, Peter Credlin. I must 100%. Just say you are just a breath of fresh air. So many people pull me up, whether it be on the streets around here in Yeppoon or Rockhampton or in airports, and they say, we just love that program. You and Bolt and the whole Sky network, they just commend. And we see you here regularly. We know you hear the voices of central and regional parts of this country, so we appreciate the fact that you actually give us a voice. And we've got a lot to change here. We've got a very stale, run-down Labor government here in Queensland. I would like to see the back end of them. There is no way in hell One Nation will do deals with Labor. I would rather drink arsenic than do a deal with Labor ahead of this next election. So Queenslanders can count on the fact that One Nation will supply confidence and certainly help a coalition government form the next government here in Queensland. So I'll be the first to put it on the record. We want change, and I hope the rest of Queensland does too. And I hope they support me and my efforts here in Keppel.
Wow.
I don't think I'm going to let you off the hook from being a part of my show next year, even though you're a candidate. I'll lock you both in. Gents, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
See you next year.
Okay.
See you next year. Have a lovely Christmas. All right, now to the federal court. Bruce Lerman, of course, suing Network 10 and the journalist Lisa Wilkinson for defamation over an interview on the project with Brittany Higgins in which she detailed her rape allegation. Joining me to get into some of the detail here, he's a lawyer by trade, but he's also the former leader of the government in the Senate, former long-time cabinet minister, Erica Betts. Erica Betts, thank you for your time. I know you'll have watched these federal court proceedings and certainly followed the reporting of them. Let's start with that payout to Brittany Higgins, $2.45 million in compensation, no legal liability admitted, no judgment of a court or any other tribunal that the claims she made actually occurred. So can you believe this figure? It's got to have an investigation, doesn't it?
The figure is astronomical, Peter. Any objective assessment of the payout leaves one wondering how on earth was this figure arrived at. Clearly there needs to be an investigation, and Senator Reynolds has asked the Corruption Commission to have a look at it, and I think it needs to be looked at because it has a smell about it which does not reflect well on the federal Labor government at all.
You have been in the past a Special Minister of State, and for people at home that title means Erica Betts there was in charge of how staffing was run and salaries and the proper processes of the political staff and how we run elections, not the public service, but staffers like Brittany Higgins. Can you ever recall a situation like this with such a multi-million-dollar payout?
I'm not aware of any such payout. Further, that which has been asserted in the court, and will be up to the court to determine whether those views are believed, but I thought and believed that there was a very strong culture that if there was any criminality, people were encouraged to report it to the proper authorities. And it appears, if we are to believe them, that is what her two employing ministers actually did do. But that's for the court to ultimately determine. But this payout figure, astronomical. It's your money, it's my money, it's the Australian people's money. And to have not allowed the two ministers or former ministers to be part of the mediation negotiation was just outrageous, and basically stacked the deck of cards all in favour of Brittany Higgins. And if you are a government that is the steward of taxpayers' money, you would not engage in such behaviour unless there was potentially some other agenda at play, and that is for Labor to explain.
Yeah, I think you hit on an important point there, because Linda Reynolds certainly has made it public that she regarded Mark Dreyfus's rejection of her ability to negotiate, to attend the mediation, to perhaps contest some of the claims put up by Brittany Higgins. She regarded that as intimidation. She was threatened with having her legal support from the Commonwealth withdrawn. It all happened in about one day. Again, I've never seen anything like that.
And look, most lawyers I think that you would talk to would say a similar thing to you. To have one day of mediation and walk out with that sum of money is just astounding. Not allowing the other side to present its case. No insurance company, for example, would allow, I would have thought, such a mediation to take place. And for want of an analogy, that is what the Australian government was doing. It was looking after the interests of the taxpayer, and they didn't want to hear the other side of the story, which one assumes must have minimised the payout or any payout whatsoever. So lots of questions to be answered here, and it leaves the government going into the Christmas break with a huge stench over it as to what they knew at the very beginning, which has always been out there, especially with the Minister for Finance, Katie Gallagher. She knew about these matters before they became public, and then as Minister for Finance, she presides over the federal government's finances and the payout. This has a stench about it, and it does need to be investigated and investigated fully.
What about those payouts to Bruce Lerman? We know that there was one by News Corp. Well, that's my employer here at Sky News. It's answerable to its shareholders. But the ABC, we found out in court, paid Lerman about $150,000, I think it was, Eric. They've tried to keep that quiet. They've been pursued in Senate estimates. They haven't disclosed the figure. It's now come out in the court. This is now becoming a bit of a pattern for the ABC, requiring them to settle, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these sorts of defamation actions. It's becoming routine.
And once again, it's taxpayers' money, Peter, and the ABC has a duty to protect taxpayers' money, and therefore their standard of journalism has to be of a standard where they cannot and will not be sued or have to make such substantial payouts to people that make claims against them. So this is yet again another bad reflection on the management and style that the ABC engages in when it comes to political reporting.
Great to see you before Christmas, Erica Betts. Have a very Merry Christmas, and well done on all your hard work down in Tasmania, opposing The Voice as well. It was noticed here by me. Thanks for your time. All right, coming up, good news out of the United States with the Congress set to greenlight the sale of Virginia-class submarines, they're the nuclear ones, to us as early as next week. Plus, we'll hear a heartwarming story about Australian mateship and the Aussie spirit. Now, we need these sorts of stories at this time of the year. I loved it. I hope you like it too. Welcome back now to an update on those submarines out of the US and a fair bit more that's happening around the globe. Joining me now is Strategic Analysis Australia Director, Michael Shoebridge. Michael, great to have your company. Good news, of course, coming out of the US. There was some opposition to AUKUS, we know, within the Democrats and also the Republicans, I might add. What's changed and when can we expect to get these Virginia-class into the water in Australia?
Well, Peter, it is good news. I think what's changed is the AUKUS deal is attached to the Pentagon's annual budget, and Congress doesn't want to get in the way of that. There's strong support for AUKUS in Congress, but really to talk about what's happening next week with this law going through Congress, like it's the AUKUS equivalent of the Apollo moon landings, I think is just wrong. This is one small step for mankind, but it's not a giant leap for AUKUS. There would be 8 more years where future Congresses can stop this deal. And the reason there was any trouble this year, not even 2.5 years in, is the Americans have started to realise the enormous challenges they face producing enough submarines for themselves. And that challenge is just going to get worse, right up to the point when we want them to give us the first one. So really, good news, but it's a job of work every year from now, and Australia has to pull its weight.
This is why I love having you on the show, Michael, because you haven't drunk the Kool-Aid. You are right to remind us that every single year this is something we've got to keep fighting for. And honestly, until we see subs in the water, I won't believe we've got AUKUS. It's not good enough just to have announcement after announcement. I want the boats in the water. Talk to me about this deal Australia signed with PNG during the week, $200 million. It's called a security agreement. We know there's been some tension in Bougainville. I'm keen on your analysis about what's happening to our north. And there's also this concern China brought a whole lot of, I think, police officers from the Pacific to a big meeting in Beijing. What's happening?
Well, Peter, you're right. There's a lot happening. It's a year and a half ago that China tried to get 10 Pacific nations to sign a big security pact and a free trade deal with it. It failed then, but it hasn't given up its ambition to play a big direct security role in our near region. So right while Australia has signed this fabulous security agreement with PNG, which isn't just about policing, it goes from defence to policing to border security to biohazards, and it's providing a whole lot of practical assistance to grow the PNG's police capacity. Right at this same time, China's continuing with its drive to play a much bigger role, and it's having a meeting in China of a whole lot of South Pacific police officers and even ministers. So it's making some gains. It tells us there's a real strategic arm wrestle going on in the South Pacific between Australia and China, but we've had some big, important wins. The Bougainville thing is very interesting, and it shows the level of literacy in the Albanese government on PNG is pretty low. Mr Albanese needed to understand that talking about supporting PNG on Bougainville is a clangor in Bougainville. The Bougainvillians want independence, and they're terrified that the PNG government isn't going to give it to them.
Let's go to the UN, because the Secretary-General there, Antonio Guterres, has invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter, and he's invoked it for the first time in decades. It will allow him, and I quote, to bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. He's out pretty hard today calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. We've just gone through a ceasefire and got some of those hostages out. That's ended. Obviously, conflict, fighting has commenced again. I'm not so sure Guterres is any friend of Israel, and this feels to me as he's looking to find cover for Hamas. What do you think?
Well, Peter, I think you are spot on, and I think the problem is that a UN resolution or a UN Security Council resolution on this, which I think the Americans would have to veto, is like one hand clapping. The UN is only talking to member states, only to Israel. Mr Guterres knows Hamas is not listening, will not hold by a ceasefire. They didn't hold by the temporary truce that we've just experienced recently. So it's all about pressuring Israel and letting Hamas off the hook. Now, the humanitarian situation is dire. Something different needs to happen, but a ceasefire is not going to happen, and Hamas is an existential threat to Israel.
Last week on this show, we talked about the New York Times report that the Israeli government was warned about a year out from the 7th of October attacks. They dismissed the warning, though. They didn't think it was plausible that Hamas could do what they did. Reports, though, today, and I think these are more damaging, that the government was aware, or the IDF was aware, of sort of unusual activity on the day that things occurred. So the unusual activity was on the border. I think the time was about 3 a.m. Again, they dismissed it. I think out of this, there's going to be a huge reckoning for intelligence and security agencies, not just in Israel, but I suspect across the board.
Peter, it's a horrible reminder that when you're doing intelligence assessment, you cannot just turn the handle and accept all the assumptions you've made before. It's very hard to keep fresh eyes so that you notice real changes and pay attention to them and don't discount them because they don't fit with your previous view. A bit of that looks like it happened here. That's very familiar. The 9/11 story is the same. But I think the clean out of Israel isn't just going to be about intelligence and security agency officials. It's going to be the government. And really, in the post-war Israel, we can expect very different leadership.
Do you think after all the brouhaha about this detainee legislation, now that it is in place, 148 of them out in the community, I think we've got 5 or 6 now behind bars, will there be any more returned to detention?
I think there will, and the problem, we know this from Australians that are convicted of criminal offences and serve their sentence and get released into the community. A whole lot of them reoffend. So it's likely that some of these people will reoffend and they will have to be taken into custody. I just think it shows the government has been so on the back foot, not even making a plan if the High Court ruled against them. And any legal advice they got must have told them that was a credible possibility.
Spot on. Michael Shubridge, have a great Christmas. I'll see you next year. Coming up, more power bill hikes are headed our way as Chris Bowen triples our renewable commitments, throws more of your borrowed money at the UN and wants to keep rejecting nuclear. Plus, the latest on the crippling teacher shortage and that terrific story I promised you a little earlier. Welcome back. Now, I want to take you to a heartwarming story from the New South Wales Central Coast, where the team from a local tyre shop rallied around a down-on-his-luck workmate. In a video that's now gone viral, workers are shown presenting their colleague with a new car, complete with fishing gear.
I know you don't have family. We're your family. So we put money together, turn around and look at your new car. No, serious man. You wanted to change your life, right? It's Christmas, your birthday, everything, man.
Needless to say, the recipient of this extraordinary generosity is brought to tears. And when you hear about his life before this job in the tyre shop, well, you might understand why. Join me now is the man behind that video, Managing Director of Road Smart Fleet in Steel River, where this all took place, Trent McQuaid. Well, Trent, you know, the line I heard in there is, we just wanted to change your life. It's exactly what we wanted to hear at Christmas time. What prompted this really generous gift from you and your team?
Hey, Peter. Our main goal was to let Wyatt know that he's got a family with us and our company and all our employees. Leading up to Christmas, he kept making a couple of comments that he didn't like Christmas. He wanted to work all the way through and continue to do his yards and call-outs and etc. And then we found out his history and his story. And then one of my employees, our mechanic, approached me and asked me if we can do anything. He suggested buying a car, and I was down for that. And we searched high and low for a car and found one. And all credit to my business partner Tom and Shane there, as you can see in the hat. They put it all together. I was just a facilitator there, Peter.
I know that your mate doesn't really want his name out there on TV, so I won't use it. But help us understand his background, because he's come from a pretty tough upbringing. You are now his family. You're all stepping up to be his new family. What sort of worker is he?
Peter, we first interviewed him a little over 12 months ago. He had no commercial tyre experience at all. We saw this dogged determination look in his eye, something that I haven't seen for a long time with young kids. He's only 20 now. Growing up, he lost his mum very early due to cancer. And then with his father did some things that no kid should have done to them. Got taken out of home and into foster care. And then since then, he turned 18 and decided to face the world front on and get into the workforce. And mate, he is just the ultimate worker. We actually have to slow him down, to be honest. Now it's up to us to mentor him through and give him some budgets and show him how to work and then go from there. But we are so proud of him. We're proud of everyone, to be honest.
I could almost cry. I mean, I watched that video. I said to my team last night, I want, we spend all night, most nights, talking about all the things going wrong in this country and all the things we wish we could fix. We all feel a little bit like Canberra, and fixing Canberra is a long way away from us, but we can fix stuff in our local community and amongst the people we love and with the people we work, and that's exactly what you have done. I suspect people at home tonight are watching this and thinking, I want to do what you guys have done to someone in my local community as well.
That's exactly right, Peter. And it's really not that hard, to tap someone on the shoulder to make sure they're doing okay. Just dig a little deeper too to find out if they are actually okay. Moving forward though, it's, I feel like everyone's inspired by this and it's something that we want to do more of too.
I bet it's made you feel all as good as you've made him feel getting the car.
It does. Watching that video, actually, I got shivers and I was almost crying.
Yeah, I can understand that. Why I've got you, I'm a bit interested in some on-the-ground feedback, because the Central Coast is a key battleground come election time. It's some of the most marginal seats in the country. I think cost of living would be biting up your way, lots of families in your area. Give us a sense of how people are doing on the ground, and I asked someone a bit earlier on to give the government a bit of a report card as we go into Christmas.
Peter, absolutely. Look, this really boils down to the cost of living crisis that's happening at the moment. And going back to your intro, it really irritated me seeing Chris Bowen overseas at the COP28. If the Prime Minister wanted to depart Airbus Airbo anytime soon and speak to Middle Australia, speak to real Australians like myself and like my employees, he will get an understanding of how hard it is. The cost of fuel, the cost of electricity, it's unbelievable at the moment, and we just can't keep going on. It's something that has to happen.
Are you confident we can turn the corner?
Not with this current government.
Wow. Well, Trent, I think you've you made everyone feel good going into Christmas. I think you've just such an example to all of us, you and your workers. And I hope this young bloke stays with you for some time. I think he has found a family, and I love the idea that he's under your wing. Thanks for your time tonight.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, isn't that terrific? Honestly, I could do a story like that every night if they were happening every day. All right, after the break, we'll get a superstar panel in. We'll look at the US presidential debates. The lead Republican, Donald Trump, wasn't there yet again, but he's still ahead in the polls. And those new charges today against the president's son, President Biden's son, laptop son, Hunter. Welcome back. Fridays, that means my dynamic duo, two favourites, Prue McSween, Tina McQueen. Ladies, welcome. I'll start with you just quickly if I can, Tina. We'll get onto other issues, but that story I just had then with a bloke who owns a tyre shop on the Central Coast, this kid who lost his mum, who's got clearly a shocking background with his dad, been in and out of foster care. This is his new family. They can't find or couldn't find a harder worker. And just to say, we're here for you, mate, they've bought him a car. I mean, I just think that's fantastic.
Oh, unbelievable. Such a good news story for this time of year. We need more stories like that, Peter.
All right, let's start with power prices. Despite all the lies that renewables are cheap, our bills say otherwise, don't they? And we learned today too, the Victorian government, they have scrapped 3 concession scheme that help almost 300,000 Victorians keep the lights on. Now, Prue, this decision came from nowhere. We're only a couple of weeks out from Christmas. The Prime Minister still hasn't delivered on his promise to cut our power bill by $275 a year. I reckon that all these broken promises, particularly on cost of living, are part of the reason why he's on the nose, don't you?
100%. You know, all the numbnuts who bought the lie of $275. I mean, give me a break. I didn't understand why they were so excited by it, because our energy bills have gone up about 3 times. $275 wouldn't cut much off at all. But this whole myth about, you know, this renewables are going to save the world. We are heading for a huge crisis. If we think we're paying too much now, you just wait. And, you know, as far as the fools who voted for Andrews and bought his lies, sadly, it's all coming back to bite them on the backside.
I've got a word there from you for Kel, numbnuts. I do love that term. I use it myself. I've used it for many years. We'll get Kel Richards onto that one next year. Tina, you know more about what goes on behind back scenes of politics than most people do. So there's a report out this week of the Victorian Ombudsman, so the independent umpire, has a look into the issue of politicisation of the public service in the Andrews era and beyond, this whole culture of fear. The report comes out, it makes it clear that there is a culture of fear, that there's been a politicisation, that a whole lot of ministerial staff get government jobs that aren't even advertised, that there is no interview. Now, ordinarily, people like me who are in political roles never work in the public service. The public service are for people that are apolitical, not political warriors, but not if you Labor in Victoria. And this is why, basically, the state's going backwards, and I think it stinks.
Oh, it's terrible. They use them to pay people. They pay people for votes, to stack branches, a whole host of things. The Victorian especially, these positions are used as rewards. Quite often they're not even capable of doing the role that they've been given. It's an absolute disgrace, and hopefully with the light shone on it now, it'll stop.
Some of these jobs, I might add too, are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when I was doing all the stuff on hotel quarantine, whistleblowers told me that there was, political hacks coming out of Andrew's office, put into jobs in the public service, and they never turned up. So they were basically, as Tina says, just being paid off. Let's go to those education global results in PISA for Australia. It says our teenagers are almost 2 academic years behind Australian kids who went through the education system in the early 2000s. We find out yesterday we've got almost 200,000 kids, Queensland, Victoria and ACT. They're going home 2 weeks early from school holidays. And then these reports today that deputy principals in New South Wales are going to have to get back to the classroom and pick up the chalk because of a chronic shortage in teachers. This is extraordinary. I mean, we've never spent more money on education to get such bad results. Prue.
This is a generation of test tube babies, you know, guinea pigs, experiments by these inept public servants in the education department that have, you know, drunk the woke Kool-Aid. And these poor kids are victims of an education that's just gone awry. You know, they're not taught the basics. Every concentration is on paperwork to do with, you know, have we done enough welcomes to country? Have we taught them enough about Indigenous heritage and the voice and you know, gender identity, all this crap, when what we should be focusing on is reading, writing and arithmetic like we all learned. So it's no wonder that they either have lost decent teachers or the teachers are so tied up with all this paperwork to justify their existence and cover their backsides.
Peter, you remember who was onto this? Tony Abbott, early in his prime ministership, had a good look at Singapore, and had he remained prime minister, I know he was going to do a lot of things in education. So maybe something that Dutton can get onto.
Hopefully.
Pick up again. Yeah, I agree. And I think we also have to be honest and have a conversation about teachers. I mean, there are excellent teachers, fantastic teachers. I wouldn't be where I am without good teachers. But some of the good teachers are also forced out by some of the time servers, the union hacks, those that have got sort of a left-wing agenda to push. And so I think we've got to take on the unions and deal with the issues of the teachers that we don't want teaching our kids.
Well, Peter,
I
remember my teachers had supervisors. The teachers were supervised to make sure they were teaching correctly and capable of teaching well.
Right, stay with you if I can, Tina. This report out from your party president in New South Wales, a former MP who lost his seat to a Teal, Jason Falinski. He says the party needs to reform. He's got 8 so-called principles, he says, it'll fix the party. Please tell me this is about more power to the rank and file and not much more power at all to the factional power brokers. In fact, taking power off the factional power brokers. Give me some hope, Tina. Yeah, that's the key. I think you've got to move the power from the factional power brokers. The members want to say, Peter, they do want to say, I don't know how many times we've tried to reform the party, but the Constitution is far too big, too long, too complicated. I think the intention is good. It concerns me that already there's leaks out, so there's people in trying to destroy the system before it even starts. But I'll forever hold out hope for the party, Peter, and continue to fight to reform it, to give the members a decent say. I know you will, Tina McQueen. Let's stay, let's go to the US, actually, if I can, Prue. The Republican presidential candidates have had this series of Republican-only debates. Next year, of course, we'll get the debates between the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate when certainly they've been chosen. You've got Chris Christie, who's going backwards at a rate of knots. You've got Nikki Haley, formerly at the UN, Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, who is Swami. This all happened in Alabama. Donald Trump wasn't there. What do you think, Prue? What did you think of it all?
They're all pretenders. Look, Trump's going to walk it in, and I'm glad he is, because we need someone. He was asked if he was going to be a dictator. I hope he is. I hope he comes in, cleans up the joint, cleans out all the scumbags who are in there, and gets the joint running again. And there's no respect for America. That's why China's so empowered. They need someone with balls who's going to get in there and fix the joint, because at the moment, the whole world's looking at them and thinking, what a bunch of poor things.
Crew's on fire, numbnuts, scumbags and balls. Great night.
It's very nice and Christian for Christmas, isn't it?
My mother, ladies, my mother will be on the phone. I have to tell her right now, numbnuts is not a swear word. I don't know about the other one. Just quickly, Tina, you're close to the Trump camp.
Yep.
Is he going to win?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, he's still supremely confident. He's doing very well in the polls, and his supporters are hardline supporters. They're not going to give up on him. No matter what happens to him, they're going to stick to him like glue, Peter.
All right, my favourite too, Prue and Tina. Merry Christmas. Have a good break.
Darling.
Spend time with those you love, and I'll see you both next year.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, that's it for me. That's a wrap. Credlin over for 2023. Back, as I said, on the 15th of January. Look forward to your company then. Still at 6 o'clock. Nothing much is going to change, but the news will. Let's hope the politics does too. And the Lodge in Canberra. All right, that's it for me. Rita Panahi's up next.